You know, these are called Long Island cheese pumpkins because of like their flat wheel shape. It's just kind of an interesting little thing. Hey friends, Marcus here. I apologize. It's been a minute since we've talked. We've been working on some really cool stuff around here, and that's just the truth. So, luckily, after this, we should be right back on schedule. So if you've been looking forward to listening to me talk or other people talking, don't worry. We're coming back to normalcy very soon. But because it's been a minute, we thought that this particular podcast should be a little special. And what better way to make it special than me be the guest who gets interviewed? Then you might be thinking to yourself, oh great, is this another Marcus interviewing Marcus podcast? And unfortunately, to disappoint you all, it is not. Instead, my co-host for the day is Kevin Guo. He is our associate project manager for the research department here at J. Turner Research, and he's going to interview me on a very special topic, mental health, and in particular, the mental health survey that we completed for NAA.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin here at J. Turner Research. So here today we're going to talk about the mental health survey that Mr. Marcus Armstrong has created. What prompted the research? What were you hoping to accomplish, and why is it important to focus on mental health in the multifamily industry?
Yeah, you know what, Kevin? It's fun to be on this side of the table for once. It's cool to be interviewed by someone else, not just me talking to myself. What prompted this research was NAA, right? They are always, the preeminent voice within the industry. They're always looking for ways to, just make the industry better. And what better way to do that than by attacking mental health? So they approached us. They said, we really want to do a survey related to mental health. We do this every year, and so we want to keep doing that. And we said, perfect, let's do it. Here at J. Turner Research, I would not say that we are specifically mental health experts. When it comes to mental health survey design, I think that that's probably not our wheelhouse of expertise. The way that we went about it is we decided to stand on the shoulders of giants. We found, actual researchers who were deeply involved in mental health research and said, let's just use what they've already built and we'll just apply it to the multifamily industry. Why is it so important? I mean, just look around, right? I don't think that anyone in the multifamily world would say that mental health is perfect right now. Hopefully, through the report and the findings and stuff, we can start making the right steps to addressing that.
So can you tell us a bit more about how did you ensure representation across different roles and levels of experience?
I actually think that NAA handled that very well. They kind of said, we have this mental health survey that's being done by J. Turner Research, so if you want to be involved with your company or anything like that, just fill out the form and we'll give you the link to the survey, and then you can kind of share that throughout. And through that, executives signed up their companies and then they disseminated the survey down, and I think that's exactly right, man. It's just perfect the way it happened. And from that, we were able to, ask questions related to, what particular position you're in, how long have you been in this position, how long have you been in the industry. And then, from there, it just happened to work out really well for us that we got a nice, distribution across the industry. What I thought was really interesting about this particular one is that they also opened it up to supplier partners. So not only were we able to get like the owner-operator side of the mental health equation, we also got the supplier partner, and that kind of opened up, new doors of thoughts and things like that towards what mental health actually looks like.
Nice. Okay, so this report identifies high levels of distress, particularly in on-site leasing, management, and C-suite roles. What factors do you think contribute most to this distress? And then were there any surprising or unexpected findings related to distress levels in different roles?
And I'll check my own bias on this one, did not expect the C-suite to immediately come out and say that they were feeling very distressed. But the reality of the situation is they were the third highest rate of distress at 45%. On-site leasing was number one at 50%. On-site management was at 46% of distress levels. I think that's kind of like a really telling thing from the get-go. And I think it's really important to highlight the leasing professionals. We're actively trying to find new young professionals to help join us in the industry and, propel us forward. And what we're telling people right now is that the prospect of coming and joining our industry means that the stepping stone position, half of you are going to start feeling burned out very quickly. So that's kind of an alarming little stat that I think that we should probably focus in on. Those two things were probably the most surprising to me. But when I think about what causes this level of distress, what this tells me is that dealing with residents, right, the human-human interaction is what's causing the most distress. I actually have this little quote right here that came from the survey, from an open-ended response, I think is kind of telling to this. And it says, we asked, is there anything else you think we should know in the survey? And it's a challenging industry. Nothing is more personal than dealing with people in their homes. I think that's just a perfect encapsulation of what this is like. The on-site team members have to deal with this really personal interaction. For the C-suite, I don't know if I would say that it's the same thing for them. I think that they have, some level of that kind of going on, but I think that they're more worried and more worried about other things less than the one-on-one human interactions that the on-site teams are. I think they're more worried about, the financial situations, the economic situations that are happening right now, which, unfortunately are not always superb. There's some things that might be causing some of that distress there.
So, I myself have read this report several times, and one of the things that, a term that was new to me, and I'm sure it's new to a lot of people listening, is presenteeism. To give a little context, absenteeism is pretty straightforward. It's, people missing, explicitly not being in the office or just being absent from work. Presenteeism is people being in the office, but they're not fully productive or efficient, motivated. So I guess, can you dig deeper into why it's a big detriment to our industry, and then why is it important to address both from the individual side and company side?
Yeah, this was another one of those sections that I thought was pretty interesting when we dived into it. You're absolutely right. Absenteeism is people choosing to not be at work, because of something going on in their life, whether it's a physical or a mental thing. Now, the study is mental health, so absenteeism in our case would have been caused by mental health concerns, people choosing not to go to work. And I would have immediately guessed, again, this is me checking my biases when we analyze the data, that would have been much stronger, right? That people who are saying that mental health is affecting them in such a strong and powerful way, they're choosing to not go to work, which ultimately hurts the bottom line. One of the things that we care about, right? Obviously, we care about people, but from a business perspective, people not being at work is a concern. But when we actually got the data back and started analyzing it, what we found is that's not really the case. People are still choosing to go to work, but the bigger issue that we're experiencing is people are choosing to go to work and not putting in full effort into their job, right, due to something that's affecting them from a mental health standpoint. So, if I were to ask, every day that you've gone into work right now, have you given 100%? Raise your hand, put your hands down, you liars. There's no way. I would be the first to tell you that not always giving 100%, right? There's things that happen in our lives. And so I think that's why presenteeism is so much more important to look at. But I don't want to just leave it there for you like this. I got some interesting stats for you. When we asked individuals how many days over the last month did you come in early or work late, what we got was on-site management said about 9 days on average, and that only increased as you went up the corporate ladder. The C-suite individuals were sitting at 13 days. Thinking back a second to what we just talked about as far as the distress levels within the industry, for the severely distressed individuals, that was about 10.2 days on average. So what we found is that people were not missing work, but they were coming into work and not giving 100% of their effort. You can read the report to get the specific math and numbers behind this, but what I will tell you is that for the average property manager's salary, presenteeism is causing a cost of $2,500 every single month to the business if that manager is severely distressed and continuously coming in and just not giving 100% of their effort towards their job, right? I think that's why it's so important to get this figured out.
Marcus, so the data reveals a high prevalence of workplace trauma. Can you elaborate on the types of trauma experienced by multifamily professionals? Why are C-suite members reporting the highest risk of trauma, yet the lowest impact on mental health? How does the industry address or not address workplace trauma at the moment?
I have talked to many companies that kind of have some policies in place when something traumatic happens. And I think that's a good place to start, right? Think about what some of the craziest events that could happen on site would be, and then try to have some policies in place that help people process what just happened, what they found, or something like that, what's going on. I agree with you. I found it extremely interesting that the group of people who took the survey that reported the highest rates of workplace trauma were the C-suite individuals. About 80% of all the C-suite individuals who took the survey reported at one point in time experiencing workplace trauma. Meanwhile, the second highest was the on-site team members, the management leasing professionals. They were at 49%, so almost half. What I would say to that is, I think it's not the case that C-suite individuals right now are experiencing like more trauma in their everyday life. I think it's more of a situation that they've been in the industry longer, and so the rate of the potential chance to see this workplace trauma unfold is just higher like that. And then thinking about the on-site management, on-site leasing professionals, seeing like the second highest rate of workplace trauma and things like that makes a lot of sense. Think about, again, all the crazy situations you might find yourself in working on site. Again, we talked about it being a really personal thing. Any given moment in time, you might go check a particular home, and heaven forbid, there's a elder person in there who's slept himself away. They're just things that you would not expect from outside the industry looking in. But for those of my listeners who are in the industry, I think it's pretty apparent to see that there are several things that could happen that would cause these types of workplace trauma events. Another one would be like a fire. We recently went through Hurricane Beryl earlier this year, and I think that could have been a really traumatic experience too for some people who have their like windows shattered and stuff by the wind going on. So like there are just these things that you don't think about with people's homes and the way that they're choosing to live that can cause these types of traumatic events.
The survey touches on the concept of hopefulness. Why is hopefulness as a metric important to track in relation to mental health, and how can companies foster hopefulness?
We wanted to try to find a way, if someone could not do a full employee survey for all of their employees, they could still find some value in some metric if they could just track one thing. So we decided and landed on hopefulness because several major universities, Stanford, Harvard, UPenn, Texas Tech, they all did major studies around this hopefulness question. And what they found was that if people indicated that they were hopeful, there was a good chance that they were mentally well. But if they said they were not hopeful, this is just a yes or no question. It's pretty simple. There was a good chance that they may be going through something or experiencing something in their life that's affecting them mentally. In our data, what we found was that if someone indicated on the survey that they were not hopeful, then 2/3 of the time they were experiencing some level of mental distress. I think that kind of gives you a really simple way to try to benchmark your employee base, right? If you just sent out a really quick Google form survey, right, that just asked, do you feel hopeful, yes or no? And you got all the yes answers, you could probably say, these are not my mentally distressed folks, likely, right? They might be, but at the moment, they're not my top priority concern. I really want to focus in on the group that said no. And you'll have about 1/3 of the people who say no to that question actually be mentally well. But for those 2/3, I think that's so important that we focus in on that particular group and we provide them the resources that they need.
Based on the survey findings, what are the top 3 actionable steps that multifamily companies can take to improve the situation?
First things first, I would say have policies in place. Okay, I think that's arguably one of the biggest things that I noticed when talking to other professionals within the industry is that there's not always policies in place for mental health. So I think that starts from like the very top. Make sure you have policies in place for people to either take mental health days or know what would constitute like a mental health concern. What are you doing to help these individuals? So just having policies is number one. I think the second thing that multifamily professionals could do and should do is make sure that everyone knows about the resources. NAA has a fantastic library, a wealth of resources related to mental health. It's just available on their website, and I don't think that everyone always knows that that's there. And then it doesn't even have to be, just from industry specific things. There are resources that are widely available from the National Council of Mental Health Well-Being, right? They have really great stuff too, so you can definitely reach out to them, get that. And then whatever internal company resources you have for individuals, I think just making sure that everyone within the organization has decent access to that is a great second step. And third, and arguably the most important step to me, would be get a baseline, right? I know we just talked about it a little bit with the hopefulness survey idea, but I really think that's probably one of the most paramount things. Ideally, you can do a large employee survey and you can really dig into the findings and get real granular, but those are not always feasible. They can be difficult to do, especially around holiday seasons and things like that when people are coming in and out of the office. There's just lots of people gone. For the student living professionals, right, turn season is probably not the right season for that either, but I think that there's always time for a really simple question, right? And you can build these out in Google Forms. If you use Microsoft, I think you can use Office Forms and things like that. And just ask the question, do you feel hopeful? Yes or no? Once you get the answers back that say no, that's your starting target demographic, right? That's who you reach out to first. You try to get them feeling good. And then you can, spread out and get everyone eventually, but really targeting the people who said no on that survey, I think is critical. So those are the 3 steps there. Have policies in place. If you don't have policies now, you definitely should look at trying to get those implemented. Share the resources that are available. I mean, mental health is such a big topic these days. There's a wealth of resources. It's silly not to be sharing that. And then third and finally, and arguably the most important, just get the baseline of your employee force, right?
So now let's kind of take it from the other side, from the employee side. So what tips could you give them to, for individuals who are struggling with their mental health?
I think the biggest one that I would say is just reach out, ask for help. I'm thankful that in today's current society, the idea of mental health issues is not really as stigmatized as it was before. Reaching out and asking for help is not a bad thing. If you need help, then you need help. And I would say that's probably the first thing. And then 2, like we just talked about, there's a wealth of resources. Obviously, I hope that your company is providing these resources to you in a really easy place to grab them. But be aware that NAA has wonderful resources on their website that you can go get as well.
What are the next steps? So what else can we focus on in the future? What are specific areas you want to explore?
This survey was really cool to put together. And we really attacked it from this 3-pronged approach, right? We wanted to figure out distress, mental distress within the industry. So, we built the questions around that and got that information. We also wanted to figure out, how mental distress is affecting the industry from a worker standpoint. So that's the absenteeism and presenteeism questions that we really got into. And then the third one was workplace trauma and how it's affecting individuals. And I would say that third prong, the workplace trauma, was the one that we couldn't ask all of the questions that we would have liked to for that particular section. And I only say that because the rest of the survey ended up getting kind of long trying to gather all this information, and they gave us a really nice open window peek at trauma. I just think that diving into that particular spectrum is what I think would be the next most interesting thing. Preliminarily, from what we got in this particular survey, this would suggest that on-site property managers and leasing professionals might be experiencing a higher rate of workforce trauma than police officers or nurses who are involved in more of these high-stakes situations. So I think that would just be a nice look at to try to figure out what's going on there. What can we do to help individuals who are dealing with that? So I would say that would be my next step for a future direction.
What role can industry associations like NAA play in promoting mental health awareness and creating positive change within the industry? And how can we move from simply discussing mental health to implementing actual tangible solutions?
Yeah, big shout out to NAA for everything that they do around mental health. Their mental health awareness week is fantastic. Like I've mentioned throughout this entire conversation, the resources on their website, absolutely fantastic. And I think them being like this preeminent leading voice of the industry and them placing such a high emphasis on mental health is, kind of decreasing the stigma around mental health. So I think that they're doing everything that they can from, the perspective that they're in. I would also say, like, at Apartmentalize, right? Any of the conferences, not just NAA, but any of the major conference players, they all have sessions related to mental health. And I think that's also helping decrease the stigma around mental health. We're trying to put a larger emphasis on employee satisfaction. And I think that's perfect. That's definitely the right direction. Now, the harder part is to get out of this seminar-based, just learning about what mental health looks like and things like that, and really going forward to the next actionable steps. I think that's the critical juncture that we're at. And as far as implementing it, I really think it starts, like we talked about earlier, from the policy perspective of your company, right? If you have good policies in place for mental health, then that makes it actionable. People can start taking action on mental health. Without the policies in place, it's always going to be I don't know where we kind of stand on this. If I'm, an employee suffering from mental health issues, and I'm too afraid to ask my boss about, what I should do for fear of something, I think that really starts from the policy place, right? If there's policies in place, you kind of know the answer that you're going to get. You have an expectation. So I think that's really important. But what I will say that was kind of interesting from the report, mental health is usually talked about in this like negative direction. I think we've all seen the particular commercial with the two gentlemen who were at the soccer game. One's always looking kind of sad and depressed. As the games go on, they're going to more and more games. Eventually, the guy who was really happy throughout the entire commercial isn't there anymore. And it was revealed to us that he's the one that, something drastic and dramatic happened to. You can't always see people's like mental health sufferings. And I think that's a really impactful commercial. But I would also say that if you look at the data that's, in our mental health survey report, you will find that in general, outside of the people who were severely distressed, everyone kind of had like a positive outlook on their mental health, right? They all said that they were feeling better than they were, 6 months ago or like during COVID. The only people who were like, mental health is significantly worse right now are those who are like severely distressed. So again, just kind of reiterating the point that particular demographic is the ones that we need to reach out to and try to get in a better place mentally. But for everyone else, they said that their own mental health was increasing in that time range. But what they indicated on the question asking about how do you think mental health is overall, they all kind of said bad, right? They all said, I'm doing well, but I think in society, mental health is going down. That is complete, opposite to what they indicated themselves previously, where they all said that they were feeling much better. So I think we also need to change the narrative around the way we discuss mental health. Instead of it always being this, negative first type of thing, we can highlight the positives that are happening and just say, hey, while we're not perfect at mental health, we are definitely getting better. And I think that's fantastic. And we're a place that prioritizes, happy, mentally healthy folk, and we'll help you get there. I think that's another way that the industry can, kind of try to spin this in a more positive light for those who aren't, severely distressed right now.
Let's get into some open-ended responses. Can you share a few responses that stood out to you?
Hopefully you've read the report or are going to read it after this. One of the things that I found myself when going through the data is it's really easy to just get lost in the numbers, right? I'm just taking averages. I'm looking at confidence intervals. I'm saying, here's this number. This is this metric. Here's what this means. And what you lose sight of is that every single person who filled out the survey, like that's an actual human life with actual human emotions and things that are affecting them. And so, what I did at the end of the report was put a lot of these open-ended responses that I think helped, be my guiding light towards what I was trying to write. When asking the question, how well do you feel your job aligns with your long-term career goals and personal interests? Currently, it doesn't. I hope once the dust settles, I can focus on what I want to and should be doing. There is no alignment. The culture gets more toxic every year while I grow into myself as a person. Pretty bad. This is not what I want or expected. And that's only part of it. I didn't just take all of the negative responses, but I thought that those were impactful. And here's the opposite end of it. Very well. I love multifamily. Very well. I'm in a support role where I can spend my time developing my team and those around me while also getting to positively affect the company culture and performance results, right? So it doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on. I think it's important that we, provide this voice to the individuals who chose to take the survey. Other questions: since the pandemic, do you feel like mental health has gotten better or worse? It went from worse than to better over time with some counseling sessions. Since the pandemic, mental health is so much worse. People feel isolated, lonely, scared, depressed, and removed from everyone. The scar is deep and will not just go away. The pandemic has changed some people's lives forever and has torn apart the nation. There's a lot of strong feelings behind what individuals are choosing to say. And then finally, the last question here: is there anything else you think we should know? We're nothing but a bottom line. We're here for residents and coworkers through all cycles of life, and all the owner cares about is getting his incident report, saving money, and keeping us out of the news. Working for a we don't really care industry makes the weight of mental health heavier than street life. It's a challenging industry. Nothing is more personal than dealing with people and their homes, like we talked about earlier. Whatever decisions we choose to make as an industry or as a company have actual tangible results on individuals' lives. Starting from the top and creating these policies is paramount. And then, making sure that we're trying to do our best to take care of our employees. That's, I think, really, really important. I won't leave on doom and gloom, though. Kevin, here's one final one. Thank you for showing you care about mental health and caring about our mental well-being. That was a nice one to read after going through some of those heavier responses, really trying to put myself in this person's shoes. How are they living their life right now? What's causing them to feel this way?
Thank you for sharing those responses. Thank you as well to other survey participants. It's been an excellent conversation. Do you have a final message you'd like to leave our listeners with?
One, please read the report. I think it's just critical. It's really important. We poured our heart and soul into it. We tried to take the most care that we possibly could because, again, the subject matter is so important. So please read the report. It will probably take you 10-15 minutes to get through the entirety of it. So it's not a demanding read out of you, but I do think it gives you strong information about the industry as a whole and, what everyone's kind of dealing with. You can't fix a problem if you don't know where the problem is. I think that's probably the best place to start. Outside of that, again, if you are a person who's dealing with mental distress in any way, you should ask for help. Don't be afraid of that. I think, again, the stigma around mental health as a society is definitely dwindling. So reaching out is perfect. And then again, if you are in a position of leadership, you should follow the three things that I listed out earlier, creating this policy plan, having that in place, making sure that you're sharing mental health resources. That's incredibly important. And then finally, get the baseline, right? You are in the position of power. You have the ability to make the changes, right? So I think if you just send out the one question survey, that's an extremely important piece here. Do you feel hopeful? Yes or no? Things are getting better, right? It's not always doom and gloom. Several people within the industry indicating lots of positive things around mental health. And I think it's important to know those things too, right? We fix what's wrong and we should congratulate things that are going well, that we're doing well as an industry. So those are the last things that I would leave you with, Kevin.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Kevin. There it was, friends. Here's the reality. Mental health is of paramount importance. It's hard to, overstate how crucial understanding mental health in our industry is. There's a higher turnover rate at the moment. What I would challenge you is to read the report. It should only take 15 minutes, like I said before, to go through the whole thing. And I don't think that taking 15 minutes of your day to read this would be a bad idea. Things can't get better until you begin to understand what the problem is. This has been Marcus Armstrong from the Multifamily Review. Bye, friends.